So welcome to today's call. Well, it's hosted by these two people. Great. I have the fun for doing the antitrust notice, policy notice. So I'll leave you to read it. If you've never been in a Linux Foundation meeting, then it's quite important. If you need any legal help and are a member, you can contact Andrew Updegrove of his firm mentioned there, who can give you legal advice. Otherwise, you can seek your own legal advice through your own corporation, etc. And if this is not okay for you, then please leave the meeting now. Hopefully that will do it. Sounds like a lot of fun. And I'll move on to the agenda. We have some project news put together by Shane, so I may or may not know much about them. The Open Compliance Summit call for papers, that's in Tokyo, so a good thing to do. Some stuff from the specification work group led by Chris, some education work group stuff by me, and then any other business. So I guess I'll skip straight to the OpenChain project news. CGV, which apparently is Korea's largest cinema company, announces a compliant program. Okay, that's nice. There's been a recent webinar as a case study by ZF. Actually, I did watch that one, so I think that is worth having a look. Why did it go backwards? So yeah, if you're interested, it's definitely worth checking that one out. There's some recordings of the OpenChain Mini Summit. I have not looked at those yet, but I'm sure that they're fantastic. And the OpenChain Tooling Working Group, all of their meetings are recorded, but they use a different system to the Foundation provided Zoom service. And so these have only really just been published and made available for everyone. So if you want to check what's been happening there for the last few months, go and check out that. And apparently there's a new handbook for software supply chain security in telecoms. So I don't know if anybody else knows anything about these things and wants to say anything further. No. Oh, sorry, Jimmy, you got a hand up?
Could just mention around item number 5, the new handbook for software supply chain security in the telco industry that was done by Haksung, who is the chair of the Korean work group. I think it's a really well-written document outlining as an introduction to the telco SBOM specification and an explanation with several great use cases of how is this actually useful in the industry. And again, it showcases momentum around these topics for OpenChain, and I think it's a fantastic contribution. I encourage people to look into it.
Okay, thanks very much for that comment. I'll try to do that as well. Any other comments from anyone else?
No, I think
No.
it's a great contribution. Anything additional that we can learn from someone else's experiences with using SBOMs in the supply chain is a very good thing.
Yeah, agreed. So we can move on to the Open Compliance Summit. So that's happening beginning of December in Tokyo, Japan, and the call for papers actually closes quite soon. And actually, I have submitted a proposal, so we'll see if that happens. But yeah, it's quite wide-ranging topic areas listed here. I haven't been able to go in the past, but I know people who have and say that's a really good event. So if you do have something that's worth talking about and can get there, then I recommend that you do so. Again, I don't know, Jimmy, have you perhaps been there in the past?
I've been there. I can't recommend it enough. not only because it's in Japan, which is really nice, but Shane does a wonderful job as MC of the whole event, and the agenda is always thought-provoking. It's probably the event I go to where I learn the most every year. So I would highly recommend if people are able to go. I know it's quite a trip from both Europe and the US, but if you're able to go, I'd highly recommend it as an event. It's one of the highlights of the event here for me.
I've been
Cool,
there too, and
perfect.
I thought it was so valuable. It's more
Perfect. Yeah.
practical than the, typical open source conference, which might have some compliance, practical presentations as well as other things. This is really focused. And so I found a lot of valuable presentations.
Okay. That's great feedback, and I'm sure that Shane knows you a beer or some other drink when he next sees you for that. Okay, good. Chris, it's going to be over to you now in that case, and I'll move
No,
on to this one, or shall I'll stick with this one in case you've got anything else to mention before the next slide.
no, I think in our conversations with Shane that we decided that this is a good way to kick off this next round of work group for the specifications, uh, to think about our two specifications and where we want to go next with them. So with that, you could put the questions back up.
Mm-hmm. You should see them.
And 1 through 4. So I think that these are going to be invaluable to get a collection of inputs back from all of our users for both the software licensing and compliance and the software assurance specifications to make sure that they're playing well together, and look at it from both sides to see what practical experiences the users have had and how well these specifications address the problems, and also if there are any shortfalls, we really need to know about it in order to fix those so that the specifications are more useful to them. And then we want to look at the differences between using the ISO 5230 and 18974 to see if there's anything between those two specifications that is causing some confusion, I guess would be a good way to put it, so we can remove the ambiguities or whatever the differences are and make it more clear that the licensing impacts and the software assurance impacts aren't conflicting with each other or omitting something.
So what's the
So
plan in terms of where this survey will be posted to, or how? Will it be a LinkedIn survey or some other system and then linked to from LinkedIn, etc.? What's the plan?
we haven't set the plan yet, but there are a total of 10 questions that we've kind of gone through and massaged, and we briefed them at the last Linux Foundation meeting to the executive group, and so that they were aware that this is what we were going to do. And I think what Shane's plan is to send this out to all of the companies that have signed up and said that they're in conformance with the specifications, so that we're really getting a feedback from across the board from all of these corporations about what do they think about these specifications, and are they useful to them, or they have disconnects that we need to correct, or are there areas where we're obviously short in one specification or the other. in providing maybe quite enough information so that they know exactly what they should be doing without being overly prescriptive.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I would think going to the service providers that help as well would probably be good, because they've probably got a pretty good idea of where there are disconnects and things that cause confusion. But yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, and I think it's really going to be beneficial for both the teams that are working on these two specifications, because right now most of our feedback has been internally from the people who are participating, but not necessarily using them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And so that's the feedback that we really need to know about. How are we doing? Are we giving them a good product, or are we just giving them a product that they can answer all our questions and say, yes, we're doing this, and therefore we're conformant? Because there's a big difference between the two.
Okay, good. Any more comments from anybody else, or really any other questions related to the spec? No, okay. Then we'll move on to the education working group. And this is where I'm going to start getting even more nervous, because I might have to switch screens a bit. Okay, so this page is the basic summary. So with Shane's help, I've engaged with the Linux Foundation training people. So at least that's got a contact set up there, and understand how any updates would be communicated from us to them. And that's been shared on the OpenChain Education Working Group, including the kind of technical requirements that they need in terms of image formats and the like. Also started a review of the 193 content, basically asking for comments and improvement suggestions. And there's been a couple of comments, but not very much so far. But maybe people will come in later, or maybe it's just because it's almost perfect already. I guess we'll find out. And I created a markdown version of the course content. So this is this next GitHub link. So that can be the master version for us going forward. Okay, I will talk about these next bits and pieces as well, which is where I will have to change sharing screen. Okay, but so I'll mention here before I do that. So looking at the relevant training resources in the sample policy text, I'll show that in a second. The LFC 194 Word document is the one that's on our GitHub, and the one that the Linux Foundation training people have is not exactly the same, but I'll explain what the differences is in a second. And I hadn't seen this, but these last one is some improvement suggestions from Yari, who is, I think, not on the call, but I think anyway we're looking at that area. So again, I'll get into that. Let me stop sharing that first and try to share something else. Source policy template, I think that's the right one. Okay, and you should be seeing part of a spreadsheet.
Got it.
Perfect. Okay, so this is the open source policy template example that was provided by Andrew Katz and Orkro. And I've been looking at in this document, there's several tabs. So there's the sample policy text, how that maps to the specification, and all sorts of other things, including this tab here, which is related to training. And the reason that I've been looking at this is partly to kind of tie the things together. so that if people took the sample policy and modified it to be for them, that actually gave links to useful training that they may use to support the policy, but also as a means of kind of double checking whether we've got anything missing or not. So this is the reason why I've been looking at this. And so what I've done in here is, yeah, these first few columns are the important ones. They're suggesting particular training modules, giving a description of what that might be about. And I've added this new column here, suggesting potential resources that may well help with that. I guess, as you'd expect, some of these items are very specific to the particular company, so we would not necessarily expect to provide them something, because that's the special bit for them that they will have to do. So I'll say kind of good news is that things like the LFC 193 and the 194 course already covers an awful lot of these areas. So there's not too much left. So if I quickly go through them. So in terms of an introduction to OpenChain, then there's a couple of resources that I think are appropriate for that. There's the OpenChain overview presentation that Shane does and is maintained by Shane. And there's also the explainers that we do from the education working group. So I think that gives a pretty good idea as to what OpenChain is about and the benefits of it. Okay, so this next one I think is pretty much up to the company to do. This next set of what is intellectual property, introduction to open source licenses and compliance, and key concepts are all covered under the 193 course. And then these next bits and pieces in terms of running an open source review, compliance management, and avoiding pitfalls, these are all covered by LFC 194 to some extent. This next one about guidelines, how to minimize issues in the first place, then some of the LFC 194 content is relevant for that. There is also the developer guidelines that came from Ibrahim from Intel. Does that sound right? And the link is there. But also in terms of this policy template, there's also the code acceptance tab on here as well, which is relevant in terms of providing information that can be made into training for people. Okay, these next couple of ones are talking about tooling use cases. And well, tooling is not really required as such by OpenChain anyway, and there is some information in the LFC 193, but not much. There's a bit more in the LFC 194 course. And again, in terms of the overview of tooling available, there isn't really very much mentioned, although we could point people in the direction of the OpenChain tooling working group. And certainly in this area, I think there is some scope for some improvement and pointing people in the right direction. But I think we need to discuss that and also give the tooling working group a chance to make some comments as well. So I'll be asking them what they think about this. Okay, in terms of contributing to external open source projects, there is some text in this sample policy itself, which could be turned into training material for people if needed. Also, I think there's probably some of the to-do resources and even chaos resources that may well be relevant here. And again, those are typically available under permissive licenses that people can download them and change them to their own purposes. Okay, so does that kind of all make sense to people? Have any comments or something obvious in terms of resources that I have missed? Okay, I think that's a no in that case. In that case, I will stop that particular share, try and remember what I was going to do next. Yes, I was talking about the document to documents. Where I need to find the right screen to share. I can. Two. Should be a word. Why can't I find a Word document to open? Ah, there we go. That's the one. It's off to the way. Okay, so what I'm sharing with you now is this is the actual LFC 194 Word document, which is on the GitHub. And the key kind of thing here is that you'll see that this does include some comments and some proposed text changes, such as we have here. So I'm sure, Mary, you will probably recognize some of these because I think you've made, or at least involved in the update of the text. And there's still some comments here in the actual document. So the version that the Linux training people have is effectively this document with these track changes all accepted and the comments left in. That's basically what the difference between the two is. So I'm going to suggest that we basically accept all of these changes and then perhaps at the next meeting start working through the comments and seeing if any change needs to be made. Hopefully that makes some sense and is a reasonable way forward.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I just don't want. I want to make sure that the documents are the same first, so that we're starting from a well-known starting point. Okay, good. So I've asked already Shane to update this document on the GitHub, so we're all working from the same starting point. Okay, great. That's that item. Let me stop sharing that. And the last one, next one was, yeah, I can open up this one from Yari. Policy template. And go through the fun of trying to share the right thing again. Yeah, that will probably be okay. Okay, you should be seeing the GitHub now.
Got it.
I think. Oh, actually, can I? No, I can't see what the bit that I want. Hang on. Probably not that picture. Okay. I probably didn't do what I wanted it to do. Trying to find Yari's. Okay. Are you seeing Yari's improvement suggestion?
Yes.
Okay, cool, great. So basically, he's saying that the small, looking at the particular course, it's saying the small box word should be green instead of blue. It's basically a sort of like a typo. And it's referring to the MD. Yeah, it's referring to this picture here, where the open source component green into a software product blue, and oh, for some reason we didn't pick up the fact that this smaller box is actually blue here, so this doesn't look right, and I agree with him with that. However, I'm also thinking to, in terms of the Linux Foundation training hosted course to make this into something a bit more interactive anyway. So just to give an idea rather than what it will look in the end, here's a GIF version of a similar kind of thing. So I'm thinking that for the proper hosted course, it will be a little bit more of a dynamic picture and having the text from the course being read out with an AI voiceover explaining what it means instead. So that's my kind of intention to have a go at this and fix this, but we need to take this through the education working group. Chris, you have a hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say you might consider making the open source box a little bit smaller and just stream a bunch of them in there, like 5 or 6 or 7, just to show that in these modern days, their percentage of open source code in anybody's product code is getting to be very proportional, let's say. In other words, it used to be you'd use 1 or 2 little libraries or a bit of code here and a bit of code there, but now it's getting to be lots of linked open source code with the project code.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's a good comment. I think we can look at that, maybe think about some modifications to the text, as well as this could be like the simple version of just one piece of open source code. But as you say, it gets very complicated very quickly and lots more than that. Okay. So I think that was all that I wanted to talk about. Let's find back. Should be going back to that slide. Okay. So that's the end of my update. Are there any questions on any of that? So I guess at the moment for these things, I'm largely trying to have the discussion within the education working group rather than spam the whole group on like small bits of text changes. In any case, all of the changes we make will be presented in this forum anyway. So that's my current plan with it. And obviously after I've had a look at the 193, I'll look onto the 194 course and then potentially look at any new courses. Which maybe for the security spec, we should perhaps look at that since there aren't any at the moment. But anyway, any questions or comments?
No, I think that was good.
Well, thank you. In that case, that takes us to, I think, any other business. Of which everyone is too shy. No. Well, I think in that case, we are probably done for the day, and I can move to this slide.
One thing that I was thinking is that we might want to incorporate a few notes on the slides for Shane so that he'll know what we talked about and promised. I don't want to be held to anything later on that we didn't do because we didn't document it.
Well, there is certainly that. I'm sure that Shane will watch through the presentation carefully. But yeah, you're right. We should probably make sure that we've captured any action points. It all gets a little bit weird, right? Since we have to basically do the same thing again in 2 weeks' time for the Asia group. So it's always possible that there's a different discussion, which means any action points or outcomes might get slightly modified by the second one, which is a little bit weird, but I think it's just something that we need to bear in mind.
Yeah, actually, that might be beneficial because if they can see the things that we were talking about in this meeting today, then they can, it'll prompt them to think about what their reaction is to that and maybe spur some new ideas. So all good.
Yeah, but how would we do that? Maybe just send around a few lines of text of summary that goes to the mailing list, so they'll see it in advance. I'm not sure it makes sense to change the presentation, but maybe it does. It does have the date on the front, so the Asia one will be at least different front page, right? So, okay, we'll have a think about it and liaise with Shane to get that sorted out one way or another.
Mhm.
Okay, in that case, I'm definitely going to this one and say thank you all for joining and participating, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you, Martin.
Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.
Very much, Martin.
Mary?